Alright, no memes this time. This is gonna be a little bit more of a serious topic.
Ha! Gay!
Alright, I'll stop. But I know it seems a little bit obnoxious sometimes that I use like the laughing crying face a lot and the Pepe the Clown memes a lot. But it's just kind of to bring humor to the videos while trying to be informative. Because I know like if I just drone on and on sometimes, no one's going to want to listen and people will just find it boring, right? So I figured I'd just put a little bit of myself into these videos to just try and get a laugh out of people while just getting my point across as well too, right? And when I call people idiots or assholes or whatever it is, it's not specifically directed to be offensive or malicious at all. It's just kind of just to bring humor to the situation, while at the same time, there's this part of the hobby that doesn't get talked about enough. And what I mean by that is behind all these cards, the hype, and all this content on social media that's driven behind showing off how cool and shiny these cards are, there's kind of a really dark side of the hobby that no one really talks about. And I'm gonna give an example because based on YouTube analytics, I know I don't really have a large following, but based on observations and the analytics alone, most of us are around the same age when it comes to these collectibles. We're roughly around between mid-20s to early to mid-30s. Which makes sense though, right? When you think about it, when it comes to nostalgia, and we're at a point in our lives, most of us, where we're starting to earn money and we have that extra income to spend on these hobbies. And it's kind of ironic that I actually had these booster pack wrappers. For whatever reason, I actually kept these around from when I was a kid, and I bought booster packs at some random hobby store that I found. And when you actually look back on it, it's really interesting to think that these cards and collectible card games like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, they all got big, and in this case, Magic Ruler was actually released in the year 2002. And when you think about it, right, remember when you were a kid and you opened these booster packs? We didn't have a concept of what cards are super rare, what cards are completely garbage. When you open these packs and you got a pile of cards, you're like, oh man, this is pretty cool. If you were to get a super rare card, that's just a bonus on top. But overall, you're just like, wow, this is really fun to open these packs, and it's really enjoyable to play the card games with your friends, show off the cards. And you weren't really thinking that much as a kid about the actual value of the card and how you open a box of cards and this card is worthless and this card is worth this much money, right? But I've been just noticing a trend, I guess, in the recent few years when it comes to more and more people collecting, and this goes even way beyond specific card games. You look at even things like sports cards, where everyone's looking at cards like it's money. You see all these examples of this, for example, just a clip of just a bunch of grown adults during the past 2 years rushing into Walmart, fighting over trading cards, trampling over each other, and just kids in general that walk into all these stores are not able to get the cards. And I saw it even in my local Targets, where you have grown adults just sweeping everything off the shelves, and some part of it just feels really disgusting. That video is more of an example of mostly scalping and reselling, but I just want to bring the attention to when you notice that these crowds are people roughly around our age, the people that watch my videos or collectible videos in general, where you're between the age of mid-20s, early 20s to 30s and mid-30s. And I'm gonna use a more realistic example as well too. I had a booster pack laying around, and this is a Pokemon blister, right? I'm sure we've all seen pack opening content where people, it's all over, right? Social media, where everyone's hyping up, pack opening, and everyone's so excited about it. I get excited watching these pack opening videos too as well, but there's just a really dark side to this that people don't think about when you look at it only from the surface. So you see people, they do their TikToks or whatever it is. They, open their packs, and then, some people might just go like, it's a green code card, it's garbage. Or then you see people, rather than just opening it, they do like, I don't even know what the card trick is. They do the card trick where, they go through the cards one by one, they sift through it, and then it's like, I didn't get anything good and the rest of it was garbage. And I noticed that this became I noticed the dark side of this a little bit, seeing that on social media, you have all these people showing their kids on the internet opening these packs. First of all, I really am kind of against people using their kids for content. I think it's just something about it just rubs me the wrong way. I really don't think you should use your kids for social media, but that's like another topic. But it really shows something when you have young kids that are like 10 years old, 12 years old, and they're all doing like these the card trick to hide the valuable cards, and then oh man, all these cards are worthless. They're not worth anything. And when you think about it, don't you think there's something wrong when even small kids like you even back then, you yourself think of yourself as a kid, did you instill into this thought that, okay, cards are worth this much money, and when I'm opening these cards, I want to make my money back, and it's all about money, 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 and monetary value? And I know people have argued like, they've always opened packs this way, they always chase, the high dollar cards. But if you think about it, like, outside of social media videos where all these influencers are opening packs and showing off these like rare cards, should little kids really know about this concept of like, these things are garbage if they're not worth money? And the problem with this is, have you ever opened the box and thought to yourself, man, I didn't get enough value out of this. I bought like a $60 booster box and all the cards inside was worth $10. Man, I'm going to keep opening until I get the chase card that I wanted. And man, then I got the value out of it. When you start thinking about these things in terms of monetary value, every time you open these boxes, you might need to reconsider why you're opening these boxes, and, and your thought process on being in the hobby itself. And this is really skewed because when you look at all these social media influencers, all these YouTube channels about pack openings, people are opening thousands and thousands of dollars of booster packs, and it's very easy to get sucked into these opening videos and go like, oh man, everything they talk about, dollar value, this card is worth this much, this card is worth this much. And I think personally it's very irresponsible for a lot of these social media platform influencers that open these packs and then do pack breaks for their, viewers, and they're not honest and they don't talk to their viewers about, what? This is something that could have a really, really dark side to it that could turn into an addiction. Because when a lot of these social media influencers open these packs, do these contents, they have hundreds, thousands, millions of views. They spend, a lot of money on opening these packs because it's not cheap. It's very, very expensive of a hobby. Especially when you think about buying like one booster box could be like $60, $70, $80, $100 sometimes, or even more, right? Depending on the hobby. Where when you open a box, you might not be able to sell the cards for even a fraction of the value. But then they don't tell their, viewers that they make money off of views, they make money off of sponsored content, they make money off people donating to them. And what I realize is nobody talks about how there's a lot of people that get suckered and sucked into these hobbies, watching these hype videos because they're like, man, I want to do that too. I want to, do content. I want to join in on the excitement. But there's a lot of people that fall into this and end up getting addicted, and they're spending money that they don't have. And I'll give an example using a topic that I've talked about before, which is live breakers and box breakers on social media in general. So what it is, just to briefly touch on it, is that you pay money for people to open cards for you online and then they send it to you. But one problem that you notice about this, if you pay attention to these streams and these communities, is that there's certain groups of people who break a little bit too much than they should, and they just can't afford it. But whoever the breakers are, they don't try to stop them because they profit off of it, right? And a lot of times you see these people disappear from the community after like a month or two because they couldn't afford to begin with, and they spent way more than they should, and probably charged on credit cards or whatever it is. And you'll notice a lot of times these people will make comments like, man, I need to wait for my next paycheck in order to be able to spend on these cards so I could buy more. Or you see certain people that have these addictive tendencies where they're continuously opening these boxes until they manage to get these chase cards where they spend hundreds, thousands of dollars, and that's something you need to pay attention to. And I know it's really easy to say, oh, you know what? These are all just personal purchasing decisions, and it's up to the individual whether or not they want to buy something, and it's no one else's fault, and you can't blame anyone else, right? But is it really though? That's like equivalent to saying something like, you know what? If someone makes drugs and the drug dealer is dealing drugs, then it's completely not their fault that people are buying it because they're just addicts. And the drug dealers are just providing the product, so they should have no fault in any of this, right? For me, I feel like it's unethical and it's just irresponsible as people with, I guess, social media platforms and just having an influence over people that might consider you as friends. Because a lot of times in these pack breaking communities or trading card communities, people are, they grow friendships and, they think of each other as, a community. And it's really irresponsible when you see certain people with addictive tendencies and nobody steps back and talks to certain people and go like, you know what? Maybe you should, hold off on opening more or buying more because it's getting a little bit kind of too much, especially when you see certain people mentioning things again, like, oh man, I need to wait till my next paycheck comes in before I buy more. And that's what addicts say. That's what gambling addicts say. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When it comes to collectibles, it can easily become a gambling addiction. How are you going to tell me that it's not a gambling addiction when you're opening boxes for however much money, hundreds of dollars, and most of the time you get nothing, and you're just banking on the chance that you're going to get that chase card that's worth hundreds, thousands of dollars. And a lot of times when these people get these chase cards, they end up needing to sell all these other cards that they have, or even sell the chase card that they have because they went in too deep on these sets and, they were hoping to just open it just for the thrill of it. And that's what gambling addicts do. They do these things for the thrill of it. And the house always wins. So please, before I continue on the video and talk about, the other topics on how this ties to like investing into collectibles and card games as well too, if you ever open the pack or if you're opening packs right now and then you always think to yourself, man, I'm not getting as much value out of this as I should, or all you're thinking about is how you're losing money, and you're struggling on your bills, you're going paycheck to paycheck, and you're not spending your money on the things that you should be, please, there's help out there. I just Googled like a national, gambling hotline, but there's tons of help out there, especially depending on where you live and whatever state you live in. Know that when you're thinking about this purely for monetary value, you're pretty much gambling in the disguise of trading cards. And you have a problem. And that's really, really serious. I know it's a cliche, but when it comes to addiction, it's not any different from drugs. If you might think, okay, I'm opening cards for waifus or, ball guys like basketball or something, right? But when it comes to these things, it's serious, and gambling ruins lives. It's been proven time and time again. You see so many examples everywhere where people talk about how they got into addictions of any kind and they ruined their own lives, they ruined their marriage, they ruined their family, they ruined their kids' lives. So please, if you notice that you have these addictive tendencies, try to stop yourself. And if you can't stop yourself, talk to someone, get some help. there's help out there. This is a really serious thing. And I'm gonna go back to tying this topic back to why I think all this also relates to investing in collectibles and card games, and why I dislike it so much. And I'm gonna tie this back also to how I talked about in my previous videos, where I worked in the financial industry, where I did help people do investments and I did do advisement and teach people how to budget, you know, and it really breaks my heart. And the reason why it makes me so angry and call these people con artists and scammers, the people that rope these people into investing in collectible card games, because as ugly as it sounds, realistically, all the people that I've seen, hundreds, like thousands of people per year, right? Most people in their mid-20s to early 30s are not financially established, and you know, they don't have financial well-being, and they don't know how to manage their finances. And it's very, very easy for these con artists and scammers to rope people into these investments, because our economy is just so bad right now that, you know what, whenever someone tells you, oh man, this is the next get rich quick scheme where people are buying into like crypto, NFTs, and all these other things, it's really, really easy to fall for these con artists. And again, I'll go back to talking about the demographic in regards to most people that are collecting right now are between the ages of 25 to probably around 35 to at earliest like early 40s, right? And when you're in this age range of between 25 and 35, when I did a lot of financial advisement, when you just finished graduating out of college, a lot of people in their 20s to 30s, that's when you have loans, debts, payments. And this is when people are struggling to pay off, you know, whatever they have. Realistically, most people nowadays, they struggle to move out. They're moving in back of their parents. The reasoning behind this is because most people that graduate out of college in their earlier 30s, you're not reaching like the point where you're making the most money, right? You haven't got that promotion. You don't have the work experience. So realistically, people in our age range, most people from what I've seen, and I dealt with like thousands of people that come in every day, and like, you know, so many clients, and most people, it's just, it hurts to see most people that come out of college, they make between $30,000 to $50,000 a year. And this is in, you know, New York City, where you would consider we have some of the highest wages because of the high living expense and the high living costs, where rent is so high, cost of living with food is so high, everything is just costing a lot of money. So even in a big city, most people, I would say like 95% of people are making between $30,000 to $50,000 a year. And that's being generous. This is before taxes, right? This is being very, very generous, because realistically, most people I see, even when they reach like their 40s or like, you know, early 50s, they're still making between $35,000 to $40,000 a year. Reaching over $50,000 a year, like, I didn't see it that much. And, you know, it just sucks, because I just saw it every day where people were struggling. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And that's why it's so easy to fall into these vices like addiction and gambling and all these other things, where people are spending money on things that they shouldn't, because, you know, they're just trying to, a lot of people are just trying to find an escape to, I guess, the reality of things. And even if you don't have loans or whatever it is, at this point, you might have, you know, kids. You might want to buy a house, get an apartment, get a mortgage. And in general, most people between the ages of 20 to 30, you're not saving yet, so you're just trying to live life. You want to go on vacations. Understandable, you want to do like all these things because you're young, right? But then most people, from what I've seen, they have no savings at all. And they don't have emergency money, which is why it's so alarming when I see people spend so much on these collectibles and they get roped into, investing in these collectibles when they're not even invested in themselves. They're not even invested in their retirement plans, and they don't have actual investments. They're investing in things that are very, very fickle, and these markets in collectibles, like trading cards, are very volatile. And when you have all of this going on, and you're thinking, some schmuck online is telling you it's a good investment and these things can only go up, it's really irresponsible, I feel, that when people are giving this advice, when they don't think about the people behind these computer screens online, that, you know what, some of these people have kids that they should be spending their money on, but instead they fell into this advice that some random dude gave them because it seems to be stonks, and in a lot of cases these people lose all their money. And count this as a small lesson in budgeting. I'm gonna talk about why most people should not invest in collectibles before figuring out their finances in general, because it's really scary when you think about it. Again, when I mentioned most people that come out of college make between $35,000 to $50,000 a year, right? But let's just be like, a little bit more generous and say $60,000 a year. So if you're making $35,000 a year, as you see here, you're making roughly around, after taxes and all the deductions and whatnot, $28,000, a year, right? $28,000 a year, that's not including like your tax refunds or whatever. So your monthly pay is going to be roughly around $2,333. And if we're going to be like a little bit more generous, let's just say your yearly salary came out of college, you're making $60,000 a year, right? If you're making $60,000 a year after taxes, your net pay is going to be around $46,000 a year. So $46,000 a year, if we do like the 45,980 divided by 12, that means that your monthly take-home pay is going to be roughly around $38,31. Remember, when I mentioned most people that come out of college, they have a lot of loans, student loan debts, they have like credit card debt, a lot of people have credit card debt, a lot of people have children, for example. And then let's just say ideally you came out of school, you don't have any debt, you don't have any money that you owe anywhere, you don't have monthly payments, you don't have a car, right? So your monthly take-home pay, let's use the high end to give an example. You're making $60,000. Your monthly take-home pay is that $3,831. So that means that most people get paid bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks. So the $3,031 divided by 2. So each paycheck you're netting around $1,915 per each paycheck. And then if you think about it, when you're living in certain cities like New York City, for example, rent is very expensive. Most people say, oh, my rent is really cheap, but realistically, you're not able to rent a place for yourself to live by yourself. Anything under $1,000, you'd be lucky, right? But realistically, most people end up renting a place for $1,500 to $2,000, depending on where you work and whatever it is. So already right off the bat, if you're making $38.31 and you're paying $2,000 for rent, you're down to $1,831 a month. Let's just say, I like to be more generous. So let's just say $38.31 and you're paying, let's say $1,500 for rent, right? Not $2,000. So you're left with $2,554 a month, right? This is without any sort of loan, any sort of debt. But then when you factor in things like you pay your phone bill, that's like $100 a month. You pay your electricity or whatever it is, that's like $200-300 a month. You pay like, your groceries, your monthly expenses, like, let's say you eat out every day. Most people that don't know how to cook and they're, single, they're eating, let's say $15 a day you're spending on a meal, to be generous. Most people probably spend more, right? $15 a day times 7. So every week, 15 times 7, you're spending around $105 per week times 4. So in 105 times 4, so you're spending around $420 every month just on eating food alone. That's without like thinking about cooking and something like that, depending on if you bring lunch to work. So between your monthly expenses alone, and with me being generous and underestimating and saying that you don't have a car payment, you don't have kids, you don't have loan payments, you don't owe credit card money, you're netting at probably roughly around 1,000-ish to 1,300-ish per month that you have left over that you could spend on whatever you want. And again, this is me being generous, right? So if you do have, you have a car, you have gas, you have car payments, you have car insurance, you have health insurance that you pay for, you have loan payments, credit cards, you have kids that you pay for. So all these other things added on, you'll realize that most people do not have that much money left over every month. If you make, six figures, multi six figures and whatever it is, then good for you. Then you have a higher chance than most people. But the majority of the population of people that are, you're just starting to earn money since you just finished college and you just, starting to start your career on whatever you plan to start in, most people are not making that much money after tax. And I just think it's financially irresponsible. I think it's ethically irresponsible for people on social media or all these forums or whatever it is to rope people in to do these alternative investments like card games when realistically most people live paycheck to paycheck every month. You also have to remember most people might try to argue that, when I earn more money, I'll end up saving more. But that's not true, especially from the thousands and thousands of examples I've seen. Typically, anyone, even if they end up earning more money, most people also do not save their money because as your lifestyle changes because you're making more money, your expenses also rise with that as well too. You might not think it now, but I've seen so many examples where people think, okay, now that I'm going to make more money, I'm going to save more money. But within months of starting that new job of making $100,000 a year, their paycheck is like, $8,000-9,000 a month after taxes. And then first mistake I always see, they don't save their money for taxes because their jobs don't do, the full deductions, and then they end up owing the IRS money. Second is your lifestyle changes before, like, you might have been happy with driving a Honda Civic or a cheap used car, but now that you're making more money, you want to drive that nice fancy car. So your monthly payments go up, and then you're eating out more at more expensive places. So that goes up as well too. You want to go on more vacations. You're surrounding yourself with people that also spend more money because of, you're just going to have colleagues and coworkers that are in the same financial situation as you. So everyone's just going to end up spending more. So just because you think that, eventually you're going to make more money, or if you're currently making more money now, it doesn't exactly mean that you're exactly financially established and you're setting money aside. So I get it. I know when people say I'm extremely biased and I don't see how certain collectibles could be investments, but I get so angry because people give financial advice, but they don't actually consider the people behind the advice that they're giving and realize they're roping people in to invest in these things because people find it very easy to fall into these traps. Like, everything nowadays seems to target people that are not financially established, and they feel like, interest-free loans, payment plans, all these others, like, you could own a fractional share of this collectible by paying this much, and or like, how like eBay and like I think Beckett has like, their storage on cards where you could buy cards and you won't have it yourself, but they'll hold on to it for you in the vault so that you don't have to pay taxes on. Like, all these things target pretty much poor people. It sounds so ugly to say, but if you realistically think about it and put it into perspective, everyone thinks they're well off, or everyone might think that they're middle class. But in America, if you look at it, the middle class is disappearing, and most people that think they're middle class are not middle class. Realistically, most people are the working class and the struggling class, and even if you're making six figures, realistically, you're not making that much money because the expense ratio between you making six figures and you're working in big cities like New York, most people are not setting money aside. And at the end of the day, even though you're making that much money, because of the cost of living and your location of where you are, you're still not saving that much money. So a lot of people I see that are making a lot of money, they still don't have their own place. They barely have any savings if they lose their jobs. They're constantly in debt, whether it be like, buying things or starting loans that they can't afford, like having like a fancy Tesla or something like that. So you have to be really, really careful. And I get it though, right? There's always like these random examples of, oh, you know what? You bought a first edition box of MetaZoo for $200-300 and now they're selling for $800, right? But for every example that we give that, oh, you know what? This is stonks and someone's able to make all this money, there's someone out there that bought into something else and got suckered into something else. And you know what? That money, they needed it. They needed it for their family, but since they're just always stuck in these addictions of always chasing what's the next get rich quick scheme, pretty much like, oh, this is going to be the next big thing, this is going to be the next big thing, they get stuck into these collectibles. And they shouldn't. They realistically should be investing in things that are more practical first prior to thinking about alternatives. But that's it. I mean, I'm not gonna go on too much. I feel like I've already went on a tangent talking about budgeting and whatnot. But my main point is just, when it comes to collectibles and investing, remember that there's a really dark side to collectibles, and a lot of it tends to prey on people with addictions, people that are easily swayed and influenced by, just hype in general. And it's very easy to get swept up, especially when you see everyone talking about how much money they're making, how much each card is worth, and how, this is going to be the next big thing, like the next Pokemon base booster box is going to be worth like a bajillion bingo dollars, right? But remember that you have to take a step back and realize there's more to life outside of this hobby, and there's people behind, these computer screens that you talk to. When you're telling these people like, oh man, this is stonks and we should just buy up all these things and whatever it is, you have to realize that behind that person that you're talking to on Discord or Facebook or whatever it is, it could be someone that has like, I don't know, like 4 kids, has loans, they're already struggling paycheck to paycheck, but you gave them this some like, glimmer of a pipe dream that they're like, oh man, I'm gonna, make stonks and I'm gonna be like that guy that just sold this car for $10,000. And then, if it doesn't turn out that way, then they could end up losing their home, they could end up living on the streets with their kids. And I think it's very, very financially irresponsible for people to just say whatever and then end up having no repercussions for it, when it's very obvious when you see people disappear from these communities because they're just so ashamed that they lost so much money, whether it be from continuously opening packs to try to profit off of it, chasing that, rare card, or investing in just the wrong thing and ending up having the rug pulled from under them. But please, if you see people in the community that, they might have some sort of addiction, be kind to your fellow human being and just mention it to people that, hey, maybe you should stop chasing those cards. Or if you have a friend that's like buying into these things too much, maybe you want to have a talk with them and maybe, tell them they might want to take a step back. I get it. At the end of the day, it's individual decisions. And, there's one-offs on everything where, someone could strike it rich on these like random buys. But remember, I repeat this over and over again, for every one person that made a killing, there's thousands, millions of other people that end up losing everything. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope that someone out there found this video informative and helpful in one way or another, because I feel like some of these topics, especially when it comes to, we're so focused on hype driven channels, hype driven media, that everyone's making stonks, everyone's making money because it's exciting, right? I find it exciting too when someone like flips off their chair because they pulled like a, super rare card that's worth a bajillion bingo bucks. But for every person that wins, there's just so many people that lose, and people don't talk about it because it's a shameful thing to talk about. And I just feel like if I help at least one person out there, then I've done good in the world. I say this over and over again, but it really means a lot to me if I even help one person stop before they make some of these purchases and then think about, hey, you know what? Maybe my money should be put in something better well spent, whether it's something to improve their lives or putting it towards their kids or whatever it is. And I know I get a lot of downvotes every time I talk about how you shouldn't buy into some of these things, how you shouldn't invest in these things. But I feel like there's just not enough people that talk about, just kind of these darker sides of the hobby where people just, they ruin their lives because of these addictions, and they end up spending a lot of this money that they can't afford to lose. And not just themselves that suffers from it, but a lot of times, you see in these communities where people have their marriages ruined, or even like, their kids suffer from it because they're not saving their money and they're not spending their money wisely. Again, I bring up all these examples of how people talk about how they need to wait until their paycheck before they buy some of these things. Or, they're like, oh man, I hope my wife or spouse doesn't find out about this. Things like that. It's just heartbreaking to see. And there's just so much of this hype content that's made. And you see even children start, thinking about values of cards. And I could see that turning into like a trend where, even like young kids will start getting addicted to this sort of like gambling mentality. Thank you very much for watching through the whole video if you have, and thank you everyone that's been commenting on the videos and just subscribing to the channel and letting me know that you just enjoy the content and letting me know that you like hearing these differing points of views outside of all these like hypes and always talking about how everything is stonks. I really appreciate it when I hear people say, you know what, that the videos help them in order to get like a differing point of view prior to buying into some of these things. But be safe out there and just take care of yourself and take care of each other, okay? Have a great day.